Captain Roger here, your Steve Turner Ace, Arlington and Fernandina, and today we're going to specifically talk about the unfair, what is smack paddle? They call this the smack paddle. And we got some different colors. Uh, got this hot orange, which is a color I really like. The money, which is like a gold copper. I like white jig head with that one. A dark green with gold flake. I would like either a black jig head or a white with that one. And this one is the, what do they call this? The smack paddle, what color is this one? The candy.
Candy is what I think it is.
And this one I'd probably go with a white, maybe a chartreuse. Remember, you can always come to see Glenn over here, and he'll kind of help you out on what colors, because colors do matter. But he can call me up, and we can try to help you out. So basically, this lure is made out of the same plastic as the smack tails. On rest, no matter what jig head, it floats up. I mean, it stands up. So it does stand up at rest, which is different from all the other smack tails. A lot of times with that, you can drag this lure and get action right on the bottom, and they'll hit it because it's doing something that no other swim bait actually does. This thing stays buoyant and stays upright. A couple things. This is a white with a silver flake in it, and I got a red head. Red and white's always been a favorite color of mine, and I happened to got it tied onto this Evic 2000, which they sell up here with a carbon shield tsunami rod, which we've talked about. I think I got 30-pound braid on it. And with these kind of lures, I don't tend to worry about a leader too much, because I think this is more of a straight retrieve lure. In other words, when I cast this lure, I'm always reeling. You know, I might stop it for a second on the bottom, but I'm always retrieving this lure. And it swims kind of like this. Now, the most likely size jig head I'll use is 1/4 ounce. But as you can see, I go up to 1 ounce. And I do like a blue, but that's kind of a secret. But so I do use unfair, but I use other jig heads, and you should use that too. Everybody should experiment. I have 1 ounce on here with a white, and then I also have my favorite on a Baitcaster. I like using a Baitcaster, and I have the Patriot with a chartreuse, and I think that's either a quarter or 3/8 is my most usual. Sometimes I'll go to 1/8. Because this bait is so buoyant, you can rig it weedless and use it like a worm hook, and it will stay up, and you can fish this on the surface, and it will swim on the surface with the tail, kind of like a wake bait. So that's something else that's key. You get a lot of things on this bait. They sell one size, so people say, well, it's one size. Well, Unfair's was thought that out. You can trim this. Most of this bait is the same diameter, so you can trim 1 inch off, and you can go to 3-inch and still have that big tail on there. Now, the way we rig these baits, and Steve Turner is all about not just selling the product, but that's why he's got me talking. He really wants someone to kind of inform everybody. We want to sell you something that you know how to use. And so we get this Gorilla Glue. We figured out on the water, because I'm not behind a counter. I'm on the water all the time. And me and Glenn Shelton figured out that the Gorilla Glue, so we kind of had we talked about it, and we both figured out that this Gorilla Glue is the best one. The reason why I like it doesn't drip all over the place.
It's gel.
Kind of the gel. So you can dab it. Little dab there. Little dab there. Now what I actually do, it's a 1/4 ounce. I grab that jig head, and I want it straight as can be, and I'll come down, straight down like that. And then I'll push a little bit further, trying to keep it as straight as I can, and come back through like that. And then where I have that glue, I'll push it up past the barb, and bam, there it is. Now this, what do we call this jig?
That is the wobble.
That's the wobble jig head. Now the difference between the straight jig head, you're going to get more of a straight uh, uh, swimming action on this. But this wobble, what it does, it actually gives a little more wobble, a little more action,
It's
a
like
little more erratic.
almost a dart.
Yeah. So it does play havoc, and with the jig head the way it is, it kind of helps it stand up better. But it doesn't really matter what jig head; they're all going to stand up because these plastics are very buoyant. Another unique thing about these unfairs. Now I got that glue on there, and usually about 7-8 seconds, it's ready to go. You can start fishing. And the great thing about these unfair plastics, you're good probably all day, one plastic. So if you're used to going through a lot of plastics and only catching, having a whole boat with a bunch of broken plastics because you got one or two fish on a plastic, those days are over with unfair. This is going to last me all day. Now another unique thing that Unfair Lures made is this reverse barb. And you can make, and they give you little rubber bands in the pack. And you come over like that, over the eye, right? Or I would come through here, or you could go ahead and then you tie the knot. And you bring that rubber band and you rest it on that barb. And then you got a weedless grub. So that's how we make it weedless, right there. And you can do that with any of the Unfair reverse barb jig heads, right there. It'll hold it right there on that thing, on that barb. But that's it. But most of the time I don't go weedless. Most of the times I just have an open hook and I swim this bait. Now some couple of the trees, I have a spinning rod, and it's just a straight retrieve. Now what I'm looking for, the reason why I like a paddle tail like this, you can cover a lot of water. And I always go low rod tip. If I'm not hitting the bottom, lowest rod tip. If I'm hitting the bottom fishing shallow water, that's the only time I lift the rod up. So you want maximum depth with the rod tip low when you retrieve. If you're not hitting the bottom, remember that. I also like throwing this lure with a Baitcaster. I have my own little personal Baitcaster. And the reason why I like a Baitcaster, it's more natural low rod tip because you tend to hold it like that, and it's swimming action. Some of the rods I like on both the spinning and the Baitcaster, I like a heavy action with a soft tip, like a fast tip. That's what I like. So I want a little bit of tip on there, but I want a lot of backbone. I want to be able to. These lures are made to really put the heat on the fish. If keep them, especially if you're in cover. I love to. If I have fish in deep cover, I'd love to get them on these baits with this tackle. And I can really muscle them out of there. And with the spinning rod and the Baitcaster. And the Baitcaster I use, this one I have 25 to 30 pound fluorocarbon. And that's what I use. I like 25. I don't use 20, 25 pound to 30 pound. And the reason why I use that 25 pound, because when it gets to 25 pound, it's got a lot more abrasion endurance than 20 pound. In other words, you're going to be able to, that line's going to be able to rub around stuff and not break as bad like 20 pound. 20 pound will snap off. 25 pounds a lot harder for those fish to cut in the mono. In the braid, I use 30, 40, or 50 pound. Most of the time 30. And braid's thinner diameter, so I tend to use the spinning rod when I'm really fishing deeper water because it tends to not, something like this jig right here with an ounce, I would throw this and then I would use it with braid and I'd tie it straight onto it. And that would be more of anywhere from probably 15 to 20 foot of water. I would start using this. Just a little thing. But most of the time, I'm fishing between 4 and 10 foot of water. And that 1/4 to 3/8 ounce, depending the current, is going to work out for you. Remember, come and see Glenn Shelton. Come over to see the Steve Turner. Remember, it's Steve Turner Aches. That's the difference. Check out the name Steve Turner Aches and buy some of these Unfair paddles and have a great day fishing, because they really catch the fish right here. See Glenn, have a great one, folks.